Amazing. Well, I think we are all here now. We're a large panel, which is great. It's going to be a very interesting heterogeneous panel. As a second part, and with this progressive kind of diving into the initiatives, this panel is called Nurturing Growth. And what we're going to see is 6 presentations that are focused around courses, but in this case, some of them are a bit less ingrained in the academic structure of the school, like what we saw in panel 1, especially on the AA side, was part of the curricula in a very integral way, and in the environmental technical studies part, which, by the way, sometimes we naturalize it, but this is a department that runs in the undergraduate part of the school. What we're going to see now is more of independent courses that really push certain investigations to kind of discover especially prototypical innovations. And we also have Manuel, Pérez, that is the chair of the Center for Sustainable Cities at IE, that will speak about the Circular Cities Lab and the Center for Sustainable Cities. Yesterday, we had a chance to discuss this a little bit, but now we will actually see what you guys are working on. And we have Morten, again, thank you for joining also panel 2, who, as Anna said before, is a senior advisor for the Research and Development Division at Nord University. And in this case, he will be speaking about a new course that's called Sustainability in Practice. So that's fantastic. On the AA side, I say this as a bundle because the 4 presentations are extremely different, but they are under the same umbrella, which is the visiting school. We'll have Paul Feeney, who teaches here at the school since like a couple of years ago, but he's an alumni, worked at OMA and Earthbound for some years, and now they run Intermediate 11. Intermediate is 2nd and 3rd year at the school with his partner, Annelise Rowe, and they also have an office. We have Milad Showkatbakhsh, who is the director of Emerging Technology and Design, which is a postgraduate program here at the IA. Aljosa Dekleva, to my left, who is also an alumni from the very early years of the DRL, and we're very happy to have him back. Aljosa is based in Ljubljana, and he has a practice with his partner, Tina Gregoric, called Dekleva Gregoric. He teaches at the Faculty of Architecture at the University of Ljubljana, and he's been running this visiting school, which is one of the first, as far as I know. So it's a very long-term visiting school, more than 10 years, while, for instance, Paul's visiting school started this year. So also that will be interesting to see. It's not necessarily something that we will discuss, but I think that the paths maybe will reflect in the presentations that will show sometimes more like one experience or more like an arch of research. And then finally, Nacho Martí, who, as you know, is the co-head of ETS at the IA and has been running the business school Amazon also for some few years, will be presenting also the prototypes that they developed in this session. So this is our panel. The idea, I think, will be to discuss perhaps methodologies, things that you're pushing forward in these programs. And again, more than commonalities, there will be differences, but maybe we'll arrive to some points of convergence and build up on the previous conversations. Now, I kind of changed a little bit the tone. I will do this very briefly. The visiting school at the IA is part of, it's like an ecosystem of courses. Chris Pierce is the head of the visiting school, and it runs all year long. And it's short courses. It's like the global side of the IA. It's like the IA in other places. These short courses, as I was saying, they are numerous. Now I think we have like around 50 courses, so it's like really like a rich pool, and you can engage with one of these any time of the year. Some are running literally right now, although most of them, of course, fall into the summer sessions and again, in different time frames. The 4 that we're going to see today, these 4 visiting schools happen more or less around the summer, this last summer for us, and Nacho said it before, it was like a quick turnaround and say, okay, what are we doing? And how with CinnovatE, we are going to start sharpening and seeing how of the agendas that are already running can relate to the CinnovatE agenda, no? And in this first moment, the 4 visiting schools that kind of gravitated towards CinnovatE, either us towards them or them towards us, were 4 courses that design prototypes that are materially involved, but also at the same time have different agendas within that. In the case of Earthbound, and I'll say this because I know that you guys are going to show literally very much the production, so I do this as a bit of an introduction. Earthbound happened at Hook Park in July, and that's what Paul led. And they explored earthbound materials, and they co-created a social sculpture, as they call it, in the forest. So they spent like 10 days in the forest. Sasha was actually part of that group. You can ask her later. And they had different talks from experts in architecture, sculpture, and earth construction. DLAB, on the other hand, is one of the few that happens here in-house, and that Milad has also been leading for quite some time. This is one of the longest, I would argue, visiting schools, because it has almost 2 phases. In the first one, there's a lot of skills being deployed in the classroom because it's highly digitally and fabrication-oriented, and then there is the making part. So the promise of DLAB is that you really leave the room with a prototype built in-house with the fabrication facilities at the school in the DPL, which is downstairs. And in this edition, they focus on sustainable fabrication with robotic 3D printing and material upcycling, and they work in this interlocking system that is based on pure compression. So it's really interesting, and it was very successful. You'll see a video of that. Nanotourism, on the other hand, happened at the end of August, start of September. I have to say I was lucky enough to be visiting guests for the school, and I enjoyed it very much. The school, as I was saying before, has a long history and a methodology that has persisted, but then at the same time has engaged with different localities. In the last 2 editions, it has happened in Ljubljana. Before that, it was more moving, and I guess Aljosa will tell you more about that. And the idea of the course is to develop techniques and that are also critiques on conventional tourism, and that's what the concept of nanotourism will be unpacked. And all that happens through collaboration with local stakeholders and one prototyping, which means the students produce a prototype, they test it in the city, and they go back to the class, and they do iterations of that on site in the class and back and forth. And that's kind of the dynamic and the vibe of the course. And then lastly, the Amazon, we call it Amazon all the time. Now it has like a cooler name. It's called Ecologies of Innovation, Circular Architecture in the Tropics, but in-house we all call it the Amazon Visiting School. It happens in Brazil, and Nacho takes a group of students to the Amazon, which is on itself like quite a challenging thing, and they explore biomimetic design strategies and local bioconstruction techniques, and they, again, build a prototype at 1-to-1 and implement it and register it. So this is the pool. I hope at least it accounts for a bit of an introduction. And I think we'll jump directly. We'll see the 4 visiting schools to start, then we'll jump into Manuel, and we'll finish with Morten, and then we'll lead to the discussion. Amazing. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us. And you can use this, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, hello everybody. My name's Paul. So this is kind of an important starting point that puts a little bit what we're trying to do in context. So it's also part of the unit here that I run, Inter 11, which we call EarthLab. There's a quote by Peter Sloterdijk where he says humans are either tree dwellers or cave dwellers, and for one it's the love of the sky that counts, and others it's a love of the ground. And the left image here was a competition proposal by OMA for a tower in New York, and it really expresses this love of the sky. And then I remember looking through the photos of our week in Hook Park, and I saw that same image on the right with these 2 feet, and it reminded me of these 2. And I think what we're trying to do in this Earth Lab and these with the visiting school we did is to really explore that love of the ground and what that could be. So the image on the right is a famous thing called the Karasas test, which anyone that has worked with Earth knows this is like it's a staple way of it's a very like instrumental way of understanding the ground. There's this larger, let's say, conceptual side of things, which is how to work hyper-locally. And I guess there's a bit of a trend just now in architecture of how can you even use the site itself as the construction. So we start with we're trying to think of these almost conceptual, idealistic sections for a grounded architecture of how you can displace from the lower half of a ground and somehow reformulate that to create new sections. With, in the back of our head, ultimately an interest on how that relates to larger projects that the country are considering. So this is where we had the visiting school, it's Hook Park, and it's this amazing 350-acre woodland, and it's got this incredible history and knowledge of the trees, species, and how to work with it, and the people down there are real wizards in using that. But we are ultimately interested in this other side, which is the ground itself. So I was quite surprised. I'm relatively new to the school. I was quite surprised no one's really been looking at the ground there. So we found ourselves digging holes to understand what is the geological makeup of it, what is the different types of soil. It's interesting because it's on a slope, so it's changed over time. And equally on the right-hand side, there's a lot of, on this land, there's weird plants and weeds, and this is pendulous sedge. So there's very local specific materials there. So we really see Hook Park as a lab to really test this idea of just hyperlocal. What can we do with simply what is there? And it really takes inspiration from the quote from Michael Heiser that the work is not put into the place, but it is the place itself. So here he was simply just, in a way, mushing around what was already there. So these are some stills from the visiting school. A lot of it was about going around in the rain and gathering and then somehow analysing what we found. And we found magical things called bentonite, which Sasso can tell you is this mysterious material that apparently has a lot of magical qualities. And it turns out we've got that in Hook Park. So we're very excited to further explore what we can do with that. These are some of the structures. So what we're also really interested in doing is finding that new relationship between the timber knowledge that's pre-existing there and then this new earthbound knowledge and how they can form a new union. So they're just perfect materials. They need to go together. So that was a little bit what we were beginning to experiment with there with these structures, understanding the different ground materials and these different grounded states. And so it was a lot of working at one-to-one scale, which was perhaps in retrospect maybe a little bit too keen, given that we only had 5 or 6 days, and with Earth it's pretty intensive work. But yeah, these are some of the structures that we've made, and even more recently we've tried to even cook the Earth itself. So there's a lot of strange experimentation going on, and finally there's the next version in this which is taking part next summer. We're going to look at this idea of the ground scraper, and really rather than using soil, we're going to look at the direct deposits of clay and how that could be used. And rather than working at 1-to-1, we're going to work at probably anything between 1 to 10 and 1 to 50 to explore the idea of what maybe a circular city of the future might look like using this earthbound material. Okay.
Great.
I'm presenting DLAB. DLAB is a business school that has been running for some time here, and since 5 years ago, I've been lucky to leading it also with the DPL staff here. DLAB, every year we have a research that we define for ourselves to explore with the students, cohort, and the faculty. We've been dealing with a lot of sheet materials, fibrous structures, coming up with prototypes. But since last year, for 2025, we initiated a new research stream looking into idea of circularity, reuse, making sure the waste in the construction industry, how to use it actually more efficiently, and how to use the technological advancements and robotic fabrications for this purpose. I'm going to talk about the research that we've concluded this year more in detail. But the workshop starts it's actually a very intense workshop, to be honest. It's almost 200 hours of teaching and building and working with the students. It divides into two big sections. The first 10 days is where the faculty teaches the cohort the technical knowledge, tools and techniques, fabrication and construction methods that they need to learn. In this period, they will form into different groups. We've had 4 groups this year, and they had to design and come up with the proposals of what brief was asking. A structure, self-standing structure to be built in the courtyard here at the AA that is within a bounding box of 4 by 4 by 4 meters, and respecting the brief's objectives. Modularity, using concrete, using reusable formworks, and self-standing structure to be placed and built, assembled and disassembled. Sometimes at the end of this phase, we have juries to look at the projects what the students have made, and we decide what to build. Sometimes we synthesize different ideas, but sometimes we decide one of the projects to build. And this was one of the few years that we actually decided one of the group projects to build. And this was this vault to build with the entire cohort. This is a time in the workshop that the entire group structure is going to be dissolved. All of the students cohort and the faculty then will be part of one big team to make sure this project is designed and fabricated from scratch to 100%. And this is actually a very important phase of the workshop because the students would learn everything from 0 to 100% side by side of the faculty. Everyone will be one big team. This is what I always call that at this phase of the project, the boundary between tutor and students are quite blurry. So we as tutors with the students, we divide into different groups, computation group, fabrication group, assembly group, documentation group. And we make sure that the project is actually built and concluded to the end. We looked into concrete structures this year because we wanted to, we can't ignore the significance of concrete in the building industry, and we wanted to be actually a little bit more mindful. The area that with concrete construction produces a lot of waste is the formwork. So we wanted to come up with a system to design a formwork that could be reused, reassembled over and over. And the other idea that we wanted to explore is to tackle the issue of monolithic concrete structures that are not quite effective in shock absorption and also in repair capacity. That's why we wanted to take a look into modularity and come and go with a structural system that uses no mortar and no binder, hence dealt with topologically interlocking assemblies. And this was the entire project brief, which we faculty were so surprised by the courage and enthusiastic nature of the cohort. And towards the last 10 days of the workshop, it was so intense, but very delightful for everyone involved in the workshop, both faculty and the students. And then we built this structure down in the courtyard here. I've been up for 4 weeks. New students, when arrive to the AA, they actually see what we've built. And it basically created a very interesting outcome at the end where students and staff together could build something from 0 to 100%. Of course, in the span of 3 weeks, no one will be professional in robotic fabrication, computation, or algorithmic thinking, but what we actually made sure to communicate is the way of thinking, and within a very concise framework to teach them how to tackle this brief in all of its technicality. And yeah, these are a few images actually of the intensity of the workshop. And actually the video shows the intensity quite well because it's moving super fast. Yeah, and towards the end, this research does not end there. We always see what we've done, scanned it, understand the tolerances, and also we're at the phase of compiling what we found in the context of the business school to communicate the knowledge that we produce with a wider audience. Thank you.
Well, my teaching partner Vich Niederschich and I are honored to be part of the CinnovatE community. And our field of exploration is restorative tourism. which we named or are calling nanotourism. So over decades, tourism has experienced continuous growth to become one of the biggest economic sectors in the world. And it accounts also for 10% of global GDP, and it's increasingly affecting our environments. But it mostly results in over-tourism that is not destructive. I mean, it's not destructive only because of influx of masses, but it's also based on shallow one-directional consumption of places and cultures that are losing their environmental and social balance. So Buckminster said, you never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. The program positions nanotourism as a site-specific, participatory, and locally oriented alternative to the conventional tourism. So we use participatory action research as a method to understand hidden aspects of place, user, and material that we see as a triangle of cities' circular economy. So through the past decades, the students created 45 projects across continents and scales, from proposing a ritual where local meets planetary with the collective action that was organized, where biodegradable farm foil was borrowed to send the message of a local community into the outer space by creating a new satellite and aerial portrait of small town of Vitania with its new identity, with a new building there around. So, or maybe an urban spa in Vienna where the healing sulfur water was pumped from the building site into the Windfluss as a waste, and turning this into an opportunity to be a local healing spa for residents and visitors of Vienna Design Week that we were collaborating back then. Or maybe turning the Vienna Boys Choir, the famous choir, where they have summer retreat in Wörthersee Lake in Austria, into an all-year-round cultural campus by amplifying the boys' voice towards the lake, but also kind of reversing the performance to the audiences on campus. This year, we were exploring Ljubljana, where Plečnik's works were listed by UNESCO as a human-centered urban design. And the project Foreign Bodies looked at the question of preservation versus activation of the city heritage. So students analyzed Plečnik's materials with their origins, carbon footprints, and lifespans by highlighting also his unique material assemblies. They researched Žale Cemetery as an example of a mini-city within the city. And of course, the UNESCO protected cemetery accumulated through time quite several additional material interventions that made the cemetery fit for daily life, like, for example, a sanitizer or a new chair or a trash bin. And these collisions between protected monumentality and contemporary utility speak of today's city's realities. So students wanted to bring this topic into the city center, where they found Plečnik's old weather station that today offers an opportunity for such a creative collision, just by kind of missing that tool of weather inside there. So utilizing these principles found at the cemetery, they inserted an ambiguous object which is capable of assembly and disassembly to create a new set of interactions, and by that bringing Plečnik's weather station from the object of memory into the object of active city life. So in the context of UNESCO's protection, this project promotes an active approach as a strategy towards a resilient city heritage. Or the other project, Flip the Table, that looks at the circular adaptability of cities' urban furniture. So exploring Ljubljana's food market, which is just next to Plečnik's the famous food marker. So they kind of understood daily circles that they have saw as a discrepancy of use. And of course, there was this kind of 12-hour opportunity gap to reactivate the furniture. So focusing to the two elements of the market, one was the A-frame and the tabletop, they of course quantified, but also explored all the geometric possibilities. By just adding wrapping straps, they created quickly reversible composites that facilitated night activities. For the final jury, the group proved the concept by making a set of those objects and organized the event. And here, thank you, Anna, for spending wonderful 14 days with us. And by by doing this during the night, they completely transformed the market into an urban venue for this kind of time gap of the night. So a simple set of instructions together with wrapping straps, they were given to the management of the market to kind of propose a future for this project. So just to conclude, and the slide is missing, but I'm going to say it. So Copenhagen introduced CopenPay this year. I don't know if you're familiar with that, where tourists are rewarded by taking action, which means that all you need to do is bike instead of drive, or help maintaining the city, like picking trash, or work in an urban garden, or taking train to come to Copenhagen instead of flying in, just to be rewarded with the museum ticket for free, or lunch, or bike rental. So in conclusion, we think that fostering participation in tourism is one of the key moments towards the sustainable city. Thank you.
So the AAVS School Amazon is a long-running pedagogical lab where students and local communities co-develop circular design strategies. The 2025 edition, part of CinnovatE, focused on experiencing the full life cycle of a project, from raw material to reuse, linking bio-based resources, bordery, local knowledge, and computational design. Over 10 days in Alter do Chão, students began with material intelligence, learning about curuá palm, a renewable, locally harvested fiber used through low-impact community practices. Bordery masters taught the Japa technique, where two palm stems form a frame and leaves are woven into a diagrid. This method merges structure and surface in a single efficient operation. Japa panels use the full length of the palm, reaching roughly 50 by 300 centimeters, and are often combined with thatching to create breathable, durable envelopes. By assisting local craftsmen in building Saire huts, the local festival, students experience construction as a cultural and ecological exchange. Bordery builders use Japa and Paya thatching to create malokas, the ceremonial huts of the Saire festival. While these rely on timber frames, our workshop challenged students to design a curuá-only frame-free component system. Students also learn to work with tucumã, a small yet stronger palm used for intricate local crafts, expanding their understanding of bio-based material performance. In the Coroca community, students harvested tucumã and prepared natural dyes from plants such as capiranga, crajiru, saffron, and genipapu, immersing fibers in boiled pigments to learn a fully bio-based coloring technique. After a short drying process, the students learn different weaving patterns and the relationship between the weaving process and resulting geometries. Back in Alter do Chão, students were introduced to parametric modeling techniques to develop a component-based material system capable of adapting to different scales, contexts, and programmatic needs. Students learn to use Grasshopper to model the structure and parametrically control the number of components, as well as its height, depth, width, and incline, generating a range of design possibilities rooted in the material capacities and limits. We established a simple production line in which two stems were tied together with sisal rope to form an actively bent arch composed of 3 poles. Each arch was then stabilized with 6 additional stems acting as transverse braces. This resulted in a leaf-shaped frame of 5.5 by 1.2 meters. All connections were made using sisal rope, enabling every component to be easily separated and the bindings reused. all materials were fully biodegradable, allowing the entire system to return to the soil as organic matter at the end of its life cycle. The leaf-shaped frames were then clad with japa leaves, creating a lightweight enclosure that provided shading while maintaining natural ventilation. Students engaged with design as a continuous negotiation between material, computation, and community. Once the components were assembled, we arranged them radially to form a self-stabilizing conic structure. The final installation acted as a temporary inhabitable interface, a canopy for shade, rest, and gathering. Erecting the structure was straightforward. The components were laid out radially, the center was lifted, and the bases were anchored to the ground. The result was a lightweight self-stabilizing system requiring no additional support. It simultaneously demonstrated lightweight construction, reversible joints, and minimal impact foundations. The structure became a site to test microclimate, comfort, and spatial use in real conditions. After use, the system was fully disassembled without damage, transported, and reinstalled as a portal for the CinnovatE festival at the local tourist pier. This second life illustrates design for disassembly, modular adaptability, cultural integration of design outputs, and a model for circular community-centered user cycles. Components were allowed to biodegrade naturally, demonstrating a return to local ecological cycles with zero waste. The project functioned as a full-cycle pedagogical experiment from forest through computation, through inhabitation, reuse, and back to soil. Allow me to play a short video summarizing the workshop. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna, for moderating the panel, and thank you, my colleagues, to be here. It's very interesting how this panel is organized, because we have been starting from the smaller scale of the material, the nanotourism, this type of participatory processes, and then I'm going to jump in the scale of the city by.
That was my last slide, sorry.
Okay.
It moved locations.
This was a MacGuffin. No? Okay, so this is me. Okay, this is I'm going to introduce the Center for Sustainable Cities, where I'm the chair of the center, and together with Ruxandra, that is over there, we are the ones that we run the center. I think it's important to clarify how is the structure, not only of the center, but how is the structure of the university, because it's kind of different from the other schools and university, because the Center for Sustainable Cities under the umbrella of IE School of Architecture, but we are not only a School of Architecture, and we are not only a School of Business. So we have a business school, we have an architecture school, we have a humanities school, we have a law school. So we have different schools across the university. So it's kind of our center, although it's under the umbrella of the School of Architecture and Design, we are a kind of transversal research center that we come across the whole university. What we do, Ruxandra and I, we are like the kind of the heart of the center, and then when we need a specific faculty or specific expert in a kind of a specific field, we find it. We are lucky that we can have access to all the faculty that we have there. So what do we do? What is the Center for Sustainable Cities? I mean, the Center for Sustainable Cities basically is applied research center. We are a kind of consultancy that we are financially, we are self-sufficient. That provides us a lot of independence. So we have our budget that we can organize, and we can decide where to invest and the type of projects that we carry out. Basically, we have clients from the private sector, also from the public sector. But apart from the applied research, we also do education and let's call it like transversal education across the university, where we teach different type of courses. From what is interesting is that they are not focused only on architecture. So our students come from all the bachelor and the different degrees across the university. So we teach, for example, courses about sustainable cities and technology, and our students, they come from the business side, they are international relations, they are the communication side, even design. And that's very interesting because it provides you a completely different perspective. And the way that we develop the program is very oriented to try to produce this type of transdisciplinary relationship across the university. The type of research that we carry out is completely diverse. It's completely different. So we have carried out research about logistics, trying to understand which is the impact of logistics in cities. We have carried out recently research for a small village in the northern part of Spain where they have a huge challenge about the population. That is one of the common challenges in most of the regions in Europe. So they asked us how to develop a kind of strategic plan in order to reverse this challenge of the population. Also, we have been working in sustainable urbanization, trying to provide guidelines to companies that work and that develop and they construct urbanization, how to provide them some guidelines. Also, we have worked in projects in order to enhance the identity of neighborhoods. So if you look, they are completely different. We are not experts in all these fields. So of course, we are not experts in logistics, but we become experts in logistics. And so we make a lot of research and then we understand which are the challenges. And of course, we build this type of tailor-made teams in order to give an answer to this type of challenges. So from that point of view, we are very lucky because we have a kind of transversal position inside the university, and the methodology that we follow is very multidisciplinary because we always, if you look to the previous slide on the right side of the slide, this is a type of classification that we do to the type of project that we carry out. They are organized between which is the area that are more focused, and all of them they are always focused on the built environment, in the natural and the social, but sometimes they have like a more a focus on the natural or in the social. But all of them, we always try to have this type of transversal approach. The different type of projects that we do, they are completely different, but at the end we have developed our own methodology to try to provide answers to a type of research that initially is something that we are not familiar with. I mean, of course, we are architects, and the umbrella of the city is so big that most of the time there are so many parameters that you're missing or that you require to get feedback or at least to get advice from different professionals. So this methodology has allowed us to work more directly and to try to insert the CinnovatE project together with the Center for Sustainable Cities, because it's a kind of cross-disciplinary center across the university. So we have launched a Circular Cities Lab with Morten and with Hero, and the objectives of the Circular Cities Lab, it has like different legs. One of them is like the education, as I mentioned before, is transversal education across the university. Also, we develop executive education, like tailor-made course for companies and public administration. And also, we are developing a kind of a custom GPT for our based on circular cities for supporting staff, faculty, and training students, of course, and teaching them. And also the last part is about mentoring. So what is, just coming to the end, my final message is that, of course, we have a kind of division in terms of the type of work that we have to develop. But the structure of the center, how it's organized, everything is kind of transversal. So when we develop educational programs or when we develop research program or when we develop any kind of mentoring, all of them, they are kind of connected. There's this type of intersection that is kind of very useful and helpful for developing the CinnovatE project across the university. Thank you.
One more left. One to go.
Yes. Sorry, we're a bit delayed, but I think it's working.
This one. Microphone. Okay. I hope you stay there with us for the last one. I'm going to present a course for students that we have. This is the 5th or 6th years we have done this course. And we changed it slightly this year to adopt the CinnovatE goal. So I hope that will be to be aware of that. The sustainability in praxis is an interdisciplinary and experience-based course that brings together 26 students this year, international students from economics, biology, engineering, and related fields to work on real sustainability challenge in the northern part of Norway. The course has been offered by Nord University since 2020, and from the beginning we had collaborated with local industry, a company called Løvold, who is a key regional supplier for the maritime and aquaculture sector. The long-term partnership gives students access to authentic industry needs and real problem contexts, and I think that's quite important for the value of the students' work. This year, the course has been strengthened further through several strategic improvements designed to deepen learning outcome and enhance student engagement. One major development in the redesign of the design thinking process, rather than spreading workshop across shorter sessions, students now participate in full-day activities for each stage of the innovation cycle. This format allows for deeper immersion, continuous momentum, and more professional approach to problem exploration, ideation, prototyping, and testing. The entrepreneurial dimension of the course has also been enhanced. Students develop sustainable startup concepts based on real challenge presented by the partners in the maritime and aquaculture sector. By working closely with Løvold, as I mentioned, the newly added aquaculture partners, student teams transform industry needs to innovation-oriented business solutions. The semester culminates in a pitch session where teams present their work, their concept to relevant stakeholders, raising both the ambitions level and the relevance of their work. The interdisciplinary composition of the students group has been broadened as well. Recruiting students from multiple faculties has created richer and more diverse teams, which is essential with addressing complex sustainability issues. Students report that this diversity has strengthened collaboration, improved problem solving, and sparked greater creativities throughout the project. A central feature of the course is the strong connection with the blue economy. The maritime and aquaculture sectors is vital to Northern Norway's region development, and understanding their sustainability transition is core to the course purpose. This year, the blue economy focus has been further reinforced through expanded collaboration with industry partners and through field visit, such as a trip to Saltstraumen aquaculture field and Løvold, which gives students first-hand insight in operational realities and innovation needs. Throughout the semester, students work through an integrated learning process that combines sustainability theory, the Utopia workshop, design thinking, and entrepreneurship. This blend of methods encourages students to think creatively and systematically, while remaining grounded in practice, real-world challenges. Guest lectures and field experience deepen the connection between academic learning and industry practice. The course concludes with a portfolio submission consisting of team-based project report, presenting each group's sustainability startup concept, as well as an individual reflection note where students reflect on their learning, teamwork, and understanding of sustainability. This structure ensures that students are not only develop innovation solution, but also critically examine their own learning process and role within the interdisciplinary collaboration. To sum up, sustainability in practice has evolved into a course that combines theory, creatively, hands-on insight, and real-world collaboration. The strengthened focus on entrepreneurship and the blue economy, supported by long-term cooperation with the industry and also new aquaculture partners, ensure that students gain both competence, experience, highly relevant to the region sustainability transition. Mm-hmm.
Great. I know, Sasha, we are super late and it's lunchtime, so we're going to be brief. I'm just going to launch maybe a first kind of reflection and gather some of your comments, and we'll continue with questions for sure in between the rooms. I think still it was worth looking at all these presentations, so thank you so much. It was really interesting to hear all of you. I wanted to pick up actually from your presentation more than at the end you were saying this idea of blended method, no, and the problem of, I would say, non-conventional academic formats. And all of you have that in common. The formats that you have presented today are highly non-conventional in terms of academic formats, but also they have this intense collaborative nature. They all happen like in short spans of time. They all need this sort of very hands-on, direct link. And they go back to the problem of applied research that I think is something that we are discussing with CinnovatE a lot. Which what does it mean to jump this so-called, and I learned this term yesterday, death valley of academic to business. I think it's a bit too much. Maybe we need to find another type of term. But there is clearly a gap, no? But all of you somehow bridge that gap in this short course and kind of applied. So I'm wondering, what is your position? What is your kind of take on this idea of applicability, of a research that leads to some sort of applicability? And maybe it is an uncomfortable one. Maybe you would argue it is self-feeding. That is the kind of question I wanted to ask you. Like, what is your position there? How much do you see in your current research as something that feeds the research? How much do you want this to be applicable? What is the problem of applicability? And how do you see that friction in your own work? It's a difficult one, perhaps. Sorry.
Just have to pick one.
It's my concern, perhaps, more than a question.
Well, I can start.
Yeah.
So sometimes when we talk about applied research or applicability, there are like different ways of application, and sometimes we think about the students and inside the university, but also for us, it's very important the impact outside the university. That's why we work with clients and public administration, and when we finish our research, we always try to involve the different stakeholders, and most of the times we are able to put on the table the public administration. So the public administration from the local and even from the regional level, they are the ones that they can leverage a change. So if we develop something that we research, for example, this logistic research, so we analyze which is the impact of last mile logistic in cities, so it's like a huge topic. And then we came up with a system in order to measure the impact, a kind of index, and we also developed a kind of scenarios which were the most, not only the most efficient, but the most sustainable ones. And also we developed a kind of first of guidelines of policies in order to reduce the impact. And we put on the table the public administration, the local administration, and the regional administration in order to get their feedback, because most of the times all the research that we do, it gets in the academic research, and so you publish in a journal, you publish or it's inside the university. So the second step that is trying to produce a real impact, most of the time it comes from the regulatory point of view, and it's very difficult. So of course it's a huge challenge. But if you are able to put in this conversation where we are like people from different levels of the public administration, it will be very helpful, at least to listen what you're doing, and then maybe over time they can gradually change it. I mean, it's not easy, but that's something that we always like to do, to try to understand that applied research is not only to a consultancy, it's something that we do, but also applied research is an opportunity to make a real change, and that's where you need somebody from the public administration, the private sector, and the academia. When we put all of them together, it's a kind of very interesting moment.
Maybe here a term that you mentioned as well, so this kind of stakeholder, no? So in your case, stakeholders is the state and this kind of agencies that are dealing with the cities that are outside of university, but you work with them, no? So in the formats that we work here, no? And you also kind of mentioned, you said, at the end, searching for second life, no? Of the things that they are made there. And we always, in our program, we're speaking about an afterlife. So the ultimate goal of all these kind of workshops that result in something built by their hands in correlation with the user, they need to have some kind of afterlife. And there are positive experiences of that and evidences. Like one of the last year's project who was focused in kind of understanding spolia in Plečnik's work is going to be published in a book, kind of a scientific alternative tourist guide book that it's available for visitors to kind of start their own ways of exploring hidden spolias within this, and thus changing the way how you perceive the city with your own participation of kind of searching the treasure. So there are projects that are kind of after these 14 days realized in a second life. But we learned with this model that you definitely need to work with a stakeholder. And by stakeholder, I also mean by user. So that somebody has to take care about these concepts to have an opportunity to go beyond that time span. And of course, there is also the question of scaling, but I think that's a difficult one also for nanotourism.
Yes, the funny thing is that the students that participated in the Amazon, they didn't feel they were part of some sort of research. It was a live project. We had a client, the Santarém Port Authority, who were collaborating with the Escola da Floresta, and the structure was for them. And we had to put forward a planning application, listen to the client. We want to dress the pier for the celebration. And I was pursuing my interest research, but the students felt that it was a live project. And then we stayed late putting the planning application, drawing plans, descriptions. So I think this simulation of real life scenarios works very well for students, while the kind of researcher or the academic can continue to explore, embed it. So there's, I don't see a separation, at least in the case of the business school.
If I may add a few points for, I think this idea of like what happens after and beyond the boundaries of what we do in the business school, especially in the context of DLAB, is when this applied research, the idea happens, how we communicate what we've produced knowledge-wise to other parties that might actually be interested in the knowledge that produced. In the context of DLAB, this is actually extremely important because the knowledge that is produced in this very short period is feeding into another academic program here, and the academic program here is also feeding into the industry partners that we tend to actually collaborate. So, as an example, it's a live iterative loop. It takes time. For example, what we've produced 3 years ago was it eventually become a collaborative research platform and research project with an industry partner, Populous, a couple of years ago. And this is taking time, but this is the intention of how we can actually produce a knowledge that is helpful for the industry partner out there.
I mean, I think this was really interesting, this round of responses, to be honest. I don't know, Morten, do you want to add anything to this? And then I'll open to any questions.
I think the most important with our project and our sustainability course is the collaboration with industry. Mm-hmm. We have a kind of switch pitch in the start where the industry come to us and tell us about their problem. Mm-hmm. And in the aquaculture, I can promise you that's a lot of problems. Right. You can see 1 of 5 salmons die before we can eat them. So during the process. So it's both establish feed, reduce sickness, reduce antibiotica, and so on. They have a lot of problem. And our students have been extremely good to take care of those problems. And I think we have 3 spin-outs from students that as a result of these courses.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes sense. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't want to take more time. Is there any questions? Tom, Anna.
Thank you very much. It's really nice to see the work. Forgive me, I want to ask an unpleasant question. I want to raise the point about the tension between teaching about sustainability and the sustainable or unsustainable impacts of the things that we do. The most obvious one is flying around a lot, but that's not the only one. And so I'm curious, I want to frame that more positively and ask you, yeah, how do you see, or where do you find opportunities to actually carry out the teaching in ways that practices what we're preaching? And the second life is perhaps already at the beginning of one answer, but I hope maybe others.
Thanks for the very difficult question. I mean, the way I see it, there's always an exchange between carbon and something else. And I want to think that what I'm doing in the visiting school is exchanging carbon for deep connection to the Amazon, profound connection, and knowledge and planting seeds. No, I'm want to think that I'm helping students to think, to connect with ecology, biomimicry, with tools that I think are important because they are the future and perhaps they have a role in moving forward. So I'm at ease with that exchange. If I was exchanging carbon for nuclear bombs or for all the things, then I would be a bit uncomfortable. So I think that is my point. I think we always need to see carbon in relation to something else, maybe one or two things. No?
Maybe I can say something. One of the reasons that actually we chose to work with concrete was exactly this question. I mean, it's not a good material to work with if you want to go into check boxes of sustainability criteria, but it's also unfair to dismiss its significance in the industry. And we wanted to rethink how we can actually use something that is actually commonly known as not something sustainable, but rethink the problem in a different perspective. And that's why using reusable formworks, using like mortarless and binaryless structures. And this is something that actually we started to communicate, we tried to communicate with the students at the beginning, like saying it out loud, guys, we're working with concrete. And then it was like, what? Concrete? And that's when we started to expand on the problem. I hope that had an impact, but yeah, let's see.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, just go.
Okay. Yeah. I think that the impact is something that we need to demonstrate. I mean, it's in our job. If we cannot demonstrate what we say, we are not doing our job properly. So it's part of the design today is trying to understand which are the parameters and which are the factors that you need to take into account to demonstrate that you are being sustainable. No? Because I mean, I don't want to go over greenwashing and things like that, but we are the side that we need to be on the right side. and I mean with that, we are the ones that we need to demonstrate that the things that we do, they have real impact. And that's not, and it's very interesting what you mentioned, if you work with concrete, of course, there's carbon, and there's many other factors that could be the proximity, could be the materiality, there are many other factors. But I think that for every project, and I'm very pessimistic about the current certifications like BREEAM, LEED, and most of them, because typically you see buildings that you're very concerned that they get a platinum certification, and you're not that, and you're sure that they are not, but they have gone over all the ticks of the box. So I think that it's very important to develop a methodology that we can demonstrate the impact of our actions. For example, I was mentioning before this project that we developed together, Ruxandra and I, for a logistic company. So we developed our own index. And it was an index based on different parameters. Some of them they were environmental factors, some of them they were social factors from employment, from the type of relationship between the different type of companies that they are part of the value chain. Some of them they were related to the urban fabric, because it's not the same to make a delivery at the center of a historical center than at the outskirts, or because it's completely different. So that's something, another factor that you have to take into account. I'm not saying that for every project we have to develop an index, because it could be so different, but I think that part of our job is in every project that we develop in some way to try to show how are we measuring our impact and which are the parameters that we are using, because that will at least try to answer your question that I think is one of the most important questions, because which is the impact, and how do you measure the impact?
Yeah, maybe just from the point of tourism, to try to answer to your question, and moving away from numbers and rules and so on, but just kind of looking at the evidence. So tourism as an industry after 2008, Lehman Brothers, was something that even didn't have like a little dip in the curve of revenue. So we thought it's kind of invincible. And then COVID comes, right? So we saw like a sudden stop of all the activities in the tourism sector. Well, later it kind of proved that it's very, very resilient industry as well. But seeing those images, like of Venice being in clear waters, or having reports that, in Chinese cities, suddenly they saw the sun again. You see the evidence that the nature, the planet, can kind of come back and retake their position in weeks practically. So it's our human behavior that it's heavily related to what we are speaking about, right? And in that sense, what we do as a teaching program is we try to teach kind of this change of mindset of how to behave, and this feeling of the necessity of taking action.
I think maybe if I might, I think I will close the panel and let everyone have a bit of lunch, and we'll come back at 2, right, Sasha? We all refer to you. You're in the center of the room, and I feel like we all ask you. Thank you so much. This was great. We'll continue the conversations later, and at the end of the day, we'll have more reflection. So hopefully, we will pick back some of these topics. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.